Hey there, ghosties. Thank you for joining us today on episode 67 of the Ghost Lights podcast. Today we sat down with Christiane Lutz, German theater critic from Süddeutschen Zeitung out there in Germany. We had a great time talking to her about Harry Styles. I mean, why not? He's so dreamy. Talking about her career and her perspective on criticism in German theater and the ills that shape all life across the world. Just our perspectives on it. So I hope you enjoy. Please subscribe and like today. Tell a friend about it. And now, Dan, give us some of that War by the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble. Ghosties, it is your boy, Sam Gilstrap. That name's got a ring to it like a wedding vow, and I'm bringing it back because it's such a good lyric. Anyway, I am here, episode 67 of the Ghost Lights podcast, with Christiane Lutz, a theater critic and, I'm going to say, theater artist herself, all the way from Germany. Hello, Christiane. How are you today?
Hi, Sam. Good morning or good afternoon. It depends.
Absolutely.
I'm good. I'm having a slow Sunday,
Those are the best kind of Sundays. Yeah. Do you have the Monday scaries already?
Oh God, yeah.
What do you have on the docket for this week of work?
Oh man, so we're gonna jump right in with this, right?
Yeah, well, whatever you can share with us.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a theater crisis going on in Germany at the moment because we had a small Me Too scandal.
Oh no!
At one of the big theaters in Berlin, Germany. Yes. The artistic director resigned last week after a bunch of women,
came forward.
Anonymously accused him. Yes, came forward. Is that what he said? So we're going to look into structural problems of German theater next week. That's what I will be doing. Talking, interviewing people about ideas. How, where is the problem in German theater? Why do we have Me Too cases at the theater? And what are the ideas of people? What we can change or what they can change.
Absolutely. God, that is a lot for this coming off the weekend to go right into.
Yeah.
Well, so just,
start with something light, I thought.
Absolutely. No, that's a good, just a little icebreaker on systematic, misogyny and sexism and sexual harassment. There's nothing lighter than those subjects.
Yeah.
I have a question. I started this podcast quoting a favorite rap lyric of mine. Are you a fan of lyrics and music, like the words and songs?
I am. The thing is that obviously, since I listen to a lot of English music, I don't always get it right away, which makes it more of a challenge to actually look into it. But then again, I believe that creates a deeper insight into things because you have to make the effort to really listen. Or sometimes I will look it up online if it's English or yeah, of course. So what have you got?
I was just gonna wonder, do you have a couple of favorite quotes from your favorite songs, even if they're in German? Or?
Yeah. Well, of course. Okay, there's two that come to my mind. One is, of course, by Leonard Cohen.
Oh.
And it's there's a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in.
Crack in everything. And that is how
there's a crack in everything. That is how the light gets in.
Oh,
yeah?
Nice.
And which also works for this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the Ghost Light podcast.
That's right. We're just shining lights.
So I think that is very deep. And another one I like to quote, which I also think is very deep, is by Tori Amos, and it's the truth lies in between the first and the 40th drink.
That's a very good.
Right?
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I normally when we do a podcast, I usually have a beverage here next to me. It helps keep me loose and a little, a little easier to navigate the winds of a conversation, but it is 11:25 over here in America right now, and I'm like, I think I'll wait. I think I'll wait for that beverage. We'll do that in the evening time.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by
so
all
you
means,
normally have the talks in the evening.
oh yeah, usually, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you?
See, it's 6:30 in Munich. I'm in Munich, Germany, and we're 8 hours ahead of you guys. But I am having, as you can see, people on the podcast can't see, but you can. It's a giant mug of herbal tea.
Oh, there you go. See, it's.
I'll switch later too.
You'll switch later to something a little harder than tea.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Christiane, tell me, how did theater happen to you? How did you get into it?
I think the fact how did it happen to you actually is the right way of putting it, because when I speak of how I got into becoming a theater critic, that certainly was not on my list, because I always thought of theater as a hobby, right? I've started acting in school. I wasn't, as a lot of people are, like I was taking theater classes, and we would put on little shows for people in our community. And other than in America, in Germany, art, unfortunately, is not really part of the actual schedule. It's something you choose to do in your spare time. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? In America, you can actually have this as an counting class in high school, and in Germany, you have to do it like in the afternoon. Yeah. So I was in this volunteer theater group, and you know, carrying theater pieces, like knitting costumes, sewing stuff. We would do everything ourselves. We didn't really have the technique. And so I studied theater at the university in Munich, and I always thought, oh, I love this so much. It's too close to me to work with it, you know, because if I deal with theater professionally, I might lose the passion for it. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
That's why I didn't want to work at the theater, which a lot of the people that I went to university with, a lot of them, you know, now work in theaters. But I realized I didn't want to do that, because I thought it was going to take the pleasure away. You know, when you face reality, you're so disappointed that you know,
totally.
You don't like going anymore. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what I thought. And when I started my journalistic career, I was writing not about theater. I was writing about Munich and the politics and Munich city life and stuff like that. And then there was an opening in the arts and culture section of the paper, and they approached me and said, "Oh, aren't you a theater person? We see that on your resume. You went to school for that. Do you know anything about theater?" And I said, "Yes, I do." Well, then don't you want to try being a critic and work with us? And I really struggled, because I thought I was gonna have to give up my theater friends, right? Because I will be the critic and they'll be on stage. How do I do that? And I was afraid I was going to lose passion, you know, by having to go
to make it such a focus for your career. Working at it might not feel as fun as it was when it was something you did to, I don't know, unwind, or as a fun activity, as a hobby would be.
Exactly. And especially since I know so many people who work at the theater, I feel like I'm so I have an insight in the processes of how theater is being made, you know, that I will have difficulties to look at it from a professional angle, you know, because I always feel connected to the theater people. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to provide that cool professional look, you know, like push the personal connections aside and just look at the results, you know. But then my coworkers were cool. They said, "You just try, you know, you try, and if you see that it's not working for you, then we might find a solution." But of course, you don't say no. You know, that was I was only starting in my job, so basically that was a factor too.
Oh yeah.
You know, you get a job offer, you don't say no.
Mm-hmm.
In journalism, I'm sure it's the same in America. It's not like there are jobs lying around everywhere. So
Yeah, especially these days. If there's something offered to
yeah,
you, pretty much jump on it, I would
yeah,
assume. Yeah, and
yeah,
especially if you're just starting out, you want to make sure that the and your boss, the editor, is probably looking favorably on you if you're willing to jump into these opportunities.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't say no.
Mm.
I couldn't say no.
So when you started working in the
Yeah.
for the arts part of the newspaper, how did you notice a shift from your friends that were theater people, or were they still supportive of your work and criticism?
Oh, totally. They were totally supportive. It was the opposite, actually. They said to me that to them it's important that theater critics also know the business
Mm-hmm.
and know the circumstances, and know the difficulties. And they were happy. I mean, from what I heard, yeah. They said, no, we like it that you have like this passion for theater. We like it that you see theater as a whole, and you know how difficult it can be sometimes to put up a production.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to put that aside. You have to push that aside. When it's opening night, it's opening night. You can't look back on, oh, that one actor was really sick for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that might affect the results, but you cannot take that into account when you write a critic. So, and also like the few close friends that I have in theater, I've tried to navigate around them.
Yeah.
Which is cool. You just open about this. You talk to your coworkers and you say, okay, so this director I'm friends with, so I'm not gonna write about his new show.
Definitely. Because even if it's an honest, positive review, it could look bad to other people. And even the semblance of impropriety from I would my opinion on it is if a critic has that shadow, it could discredit their entire work.
It's true. Yeah.
That's smart.
So I tried
Go ahead.
to be open about those friendships that I have, be open about this. And but there's enough theater going on. You can always navigate around your friends and still have enough to do. So and it turned out, I mean, what was a little sad was that I had to give up like opening night parties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was always enjoying myself very much because, as we all know, as we all remember now, theater parties used to be really good.
Yeah.
So it was the same in Munich, Germany. We would always go and just dance the night away. But I think you can't do that when you're a critic.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. Yeah. You can have a drink. You can stay and have a wine and have a conversation with the people from the theater, but you shouldn't.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's something that every critic has to decide for themselves.
It's a juggling act. How do I exist in this community and still provide an honest forum for opinions? Because as a critic, you work for the audience as much as you work for the shows that you are reviewing, and you're trying to sell a group of people to go see a show, and you're trying to keep theater people who are working on a show honest and always trying to work harder at crafting a better product for the stage. Yeah. When you became the new theater critic for your paper, did that take you outside of theater reviewing as well to look at other pieces of art? I'm sure you already had like some like you have a wonderful painting behind you there in the background or picture. And I would assume that there's some background knowledge in other areas of art, but I was just wondering if they like wanted you to go take a look at art exhibits and stuff like that, like dance shows around town.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have, of course, we have experts in every field, right?
Absolutely.
You have the jazz guy, you have the modern art guy, you have the architecture lady. So I enjoy always the exchange with my coworkers who are experts in different fields. But now that I'm so focused on theater, I enjoy other fields of art to just approach emotionally and not have to think about them professionally. So I feel like I don't really write about music because I feel like now this is the one field of art that I let myself just go with my emotions. I do not judge professionally. I soak it up. I love it. I hate it. I don't have an objective argument in music.
Yeah.
I let myself. I chose music as like a substitute. Now this is the one thing that I'm not gonna get to professionally.
Absolutely. Yeah. Allow yourself to have that bias.
Exactly. It'd just be like, oh my God, I love that new Justin Bieber song, and I just don't care. It's just like,
Absolutely.
And I don't even have to build up this complicated argument why it's a good song or not. I just let myself have that.
Just let me love lonely in peace, please.
Oh, like what's the other guy? What's that British guy that I really love? Harry Styles.
Oh man, doesn't everybody love Harry Styles?
Right?
He's so dreamy.
Styles, right?
God.
Did you see that photo of him on Vogue with the dress?
I did not see that cover.
Yeah, he was the first male to ever be on the cover of Vogue.
Ooh.
It was the American Vogue, I'm pretty sure. The Vogue of December. And he was wearing a dress. I mean,
damn.
Look it up.
I will. That's both progressive and hot. Let's see what the phone says here. Harry Styles and Vogue. There it is. Dan Ribb for the win. The producer. Look at that. He's blowing up a balloon. What?
I know. And he just like wearing that dress like he just doesn't care. No. He doesn't.
See, that's unfair. Just too damn pretty and talented.
Yeah.
I'm over here growing out my beard because there's nothing to do outside. And he's wearing beautiful bell bottoms and a pink open pirate shirt. God, he's handsome. Anyway.
So I think it's important when you're a lover of art in general, right? You gotta have those areas where you just feel and you don't judge, and you don't try to label it. And in theater, I feel like my head, that is true. It's become a fact. I mean, I cannot go see a show without like having my mind go, what's good, what's bad. So I will always do that, but I'm okay with that because I still have other areas that I can just let myself go and enjoy.
You were nervous about theater becoming not as fun for you anymore. Is that something that has happened because of this? It sounds like you've had to make the choice that
not to the extent that I was afraid it was going to happen. Fortunately, I realized that by getting to know stuff better, there's a lot of freedom and possibility of growth in that too. When you look deep into something, you will always find more stuff that is interesting.
Yeah.
So I found that to be true, fortunately. Oh, this is a good actor. Let's see where else has he played. Oh, this sounds like a good show. I'm going to go see that. Oh, that's an interesting new writer. What else has he done? So one thing leads to the other, leads to the other, leads to the other. And I find that extremely satisfying. It's like a giant field of interesting people doing interesting things. And once you get into it, you just find more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like that's an interesting test you can do for yourself. The moment this doesn't work anymore, the moment you're just bored, you have to switch jobs.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for 7 years now, and it's still working.
That's great.
And also, I mean, we're talking normal times now, right? We're not talking Corona times.
Sure.
Normal weeks, I will have, let's say, 4 nights a week that I will have to go see a show. And I mean, let's be honest, a lot of the nights, you've had your day at work, you run home, you just grab a bite to eat. Of course, you don't want to leave the house anymore. It's cold, it's dark, right? You just want to stay home and watch Netflix, but instead you have to go to the theater. But most of the time, when I did not want to go, afterwards, I was happy I went on a very personal level, because there was always something. There's mostly something that you connect with, or that makes you thinking, or that frustrates you even. then I think that is a good test for yourself. As long as that works, as long as you come back most of the time having had an interesting experience on whatever level, you're still good for the job.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. It's almost like, for me, like, I'll have a hard day at work and then we got to go to practice, and I'm always dreading practice from the moment I wake up, because like, oh, it makes the day so much longer. I'm away from my dog longer, and I don't like that. And then I get to practice, and then for the next 2 hours, I'm energized and ready to go. And when I was doing theater and going from work and then going to rehearsal, I had the same kind of feelings, just that wave. And then the second I got into what I was doing in the night, as much as I was dreading it during the day, or as tired as I am, there's a click and I'm back in it, to make a reference to Tennessee Williams.
See?
Yeah. Boom.
But I think it's the same because you keep doing it because you keep having this experience.
Absolutely.
You know, no matter how you dread it in the morning, once you're there and once you've done it, you're happier. And I think the body remembers that.
Yeah,
you know,
it really does. Yeah, It's such a good point. And I mean, from your perspective too, it just shows how, if you're into the arts, there's something that always triggers when you are exposed to it. So I get the impression that there's still the same young Christiane walking into a theater with her notepad in hand, that's excited about what's about to happen, to some extent, no matter how much you'd rather be at home with, I don't know, the cover of Vogue and Harry Styles, that you're ready to like go embark on this nightly journey that you'd have to take.
Yeah.
How does theater in Germany look like? I'm assuming they have their own playwrights. Obviously, they're putting on those shows predominantly. Is there a lot of Western influence coming over, being translated? Not so much.
Of course.
Okay.
You know, Western meaning American.
Oh no, influence. I mean, I would even Europe. I mean, Samuel Beckett, I would assume, is being performed a lot in Germany.
Oh yeah. But of Beckett, we think of one of our people. You know, he's European. Every year, they make this list of, you know, what playwright was played most in German theater, what play was put on most in theater, like a statistic. You know, Shakespeare always wins.
Wow.
Shakespeare, and I think in the opera area, it's Mozart. So that's not surprising, right? No. It's always Shakespeare and Mozart.
Yeah. So if you're going to hang your hat on any two of those types of artists, those are two good ones to pick.
Yeah. So Shakespeare is still big, no doubt about that. And of course, Beckett and Tennessee Williams. Ayad Akhtar is an American playwright that has been on German theater a lot.
Okay.
I don't know if that rings any bells.
What type of stories does he normally write, or they normally write?
It's political theater. He writes like these four people sit down on a table and have a conversation about religion, you know, and then it kind of implodes. Yeah, that kind of situation. That's a lot of the stuff that he writes about. He's big in German theater, but fortunately, there's also a scene of young playwrights rising at the moment, of young German-speaking playwrights that are given the opportunity to bring their work into the theater, which I think is an interesting trend, because playing Shakespeare is never a risk, you know, but it's also boring sometimes.
It can be. Yeah.
So I think that it's important to look into new playwrights and younger playwrights and see what they've got in stock. So there's a lot of like competitions for new young German playwrights, and a lot of like prizes, and to kind of support them, you know.
Do you notice
because also
sorry, go ahead. No, you finish.
Yeah, because it's a tough business, you know, and then being a writer for the theater, you got to be really famous to make a living of that. I think it's the same in America. Absolutely. You know. You got to be, and then there will be one maybe, and then he has a huge hit, and then he's just forced to like write another one and another one, like a best-selling author kind of thing, So the market is pretty hot here too in Germany. You always want the new stuff, the good stuff, and you want to have the world premiere by this writer and not the second production of this particular play. Absolutely. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure on the young playwrights.
Are you noticing a theme of the younger playwrights? Like, is there a certain voice that they have, or is it pretty varied?
I talked to a publisher of theater plays only a couple of weeks ago. I was talking to him about what is the situation of, when you're a publisher of theater plays, what do you do when you have your playwrights in contract, but there's no theater at the moment, right? How are they surviving? Yeah. Book publishers are doing okay, but theater publishers not so much. And I was talking to him about this because he always walks around scanning for new trends, and I asked him like what he sees most of the time when he reads new plays by new young writers, and he said it's interesting how young writers mostly try to be super political correct all the time. Yeah, and they try to bring in, this aspect about climate change, and they bring in this aspect about racism, and they try to bring in, this is about gender equality too. They wanna be safe in every direction. Mm-hmm. He said he thought that was really boring, yeah. Because when you try to make everything right, in the end, you're just kind of like swimming in the middle of things, and you have to take a risk. Yeah. If you're a playwright. So, and I agree a little, especially this younger generation now. I mean, the 20 somethings try to they're very moral. Mm-hmm. And which is not a bad thing, but in art it's also about like taking risks and
well, it's hard to enact change if we're trying to cover all the bases without running the risk of offending somebody. Sometimes we mm-hmm. have to offend the senses in order to enact some type of movement. Like, mm-hmm. And if we're trying to just cover our bases so nobody looks negatively on our voice, that we don't stick out. Like,
yeah,
it's almost a complicity at that point.
Yeah,
it's really intriguing that the younger writers would do that. You were asking?
Yeah. So yeah, do you know Yasmina Reza? She's a French Yasmina Reza. Yeah. She's a French playwright, and she just wrote a one-person show about an elderly actress.
Okay.
Who's frustrated with theater life, and she looks back on her career, and Yasmina Reza explicitly wrote in the stage directions that she wants a male actor to play this part.
Wow.
Because to kind of like create a bigger distance, since it's already a theater person reflecting on theater. I don't know exactly why she wanted that, but I'm assuming that, she wanted to create a bigger abstraction. So there was a theater in Zurich in Switzerland who was gonna do the world premiere or like the Swiss premiere for that show, and they said, oh no, if it's we're not gonna do it with a male person, because women, we want to empower women, and we want to empower the the older actresses in our team, and they ended up not doing it because because the theater in that case wanted to be so correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. They said, okay, there's so many parts that are taken away by men anyway. We want to have a woman play this. And the writers, even though the writer said that's not what she wants, so they ended up not doing it. So that I think is interesting. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm only familiar with Yasmina through the play Art, as I'm sure a lot of people who would know her from there. And that
What's the one with the hamster? What's the one with the hamster?
There's a play with a hamster.
Yeah, the one like where two parents meet because their kids got into a fight at school.
That is Carnage?
That one.
Yes, I saw that in Miners Alley. Woo! I know another one. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
All right, don't come after me. Don't send angry tweets at me. I'm sorry. It
Gods
took.
of carnage.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you for the
exactly.
save right there. A great vomit scene from in that
Yeah,
play. Very well done. Anyway, what has
yeah.
theater in Germany been like this last year? Here in
Hmm.
America, it's been different for a lot of people. I mean, there are equity rules that have come out over the course of the pandemic that have kind of shifted what stage actors can and can't do in a much more stricter way. It's there are theater companies that are essentially privately funded here that have been shut down.
Hmm.
Some shuttered permanently. Some resorting into online Zoom plays, and and
Yeah.
one of the consistent things throughout is that our ability to perform has been severely curtailed, if not completely eliminated. I'm assuming it's very similar out
Hmm.
there in Germany, yes?
Yeah. Yeah. Sadly, this weekend pretty much marks 1 year of
Hmm.
when the theaters first closed. Yeah, yeah. And we realized, okay, this is something that's not just gonna go away. Looking back on it, it feels like theater in Germany has been on the constant verge of wanting to reopen, but then it just never really got to reopen
Mm.
so far. We've had a small window of time, I think in July, August, September, October, when there was some sort of like outdoor theater possible. And even in October, even inside theater with only 50 visitors,
Hmm.
that was the rule. But that was when the numbers were down in Germany to a degree where it was responsible to reopen the theaters. So it's been there's been a lot of streaming.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of streaming, and let me tell you, it was not pretty. Yeah, a lot of it. I mean, I don't know. See, the nice thing about theater is that it's something that you experience in a room with people,
Yes.
right? It's one of its biggest qualities is that it's not a digital experience.
Hmm.
So what happened the moment the theater realized, okay, we don't have that now. We don't have the possibility to meet face to face. How would you say in English? It's like, yeah, it's not digital, but it's in the
Oh,
room.
analog.
It's analog.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, analog. There
Yeah.
we go. Yeah. So yeah, that opportunity is not there. Oh, what do we do? Why don't we just set up a camera and like have the actors play on stage and just record that and stream that to people's houses? So, and of course, since I'm a theater critic, I had to watch all this, right? And
Oh.
just try to see, like, huh, what do we make of this? And so it was, I mean, from my perspective, and I say this, right, with all my love for theater, it was a process of learning this last year, I want to say, for the theater, because they had to realize how can we be present when we're not present, you
Mm.
know, and what opportunities do we have to bring some of the spark of theater to bring that on the computer monitors, because when you narrow it down, that's really all there was most of the time.
Hmm.
So I think there was a process of learning and trial and error, and a lot of errors, and
Hmm.
you know, and it's just gotten a little bit more interesting, I want to
Yeah.
say. Yeah, yeah. And I thought that was really interesting to see how little flexibility there was. I mean, I think highly of theater people, right?
Hmm.
I think they're really creative and they're flexible in their minds and they're full of fantasies and ideas and they're quick and they're fast, but they were in shock. They were paralyzed and nothing interesting happened. And I didn't really understand why that was the case,
Mm.
why that had to be the case, because I thought, okay, you know what? I mean, I've been looking at the theater for 7 years now, and I see where its structural problems are, and I talk to actors, and they tell me how high the pressure is and how frustrating it can be to be stuck in this. You know, it's a company after all, right?
Yeah.
And it's work, and you have to go. And so I thought it should be liberating to them to have the opportunity to really have the time now to think of how do we want to do, what kind of theater do we want to do,
Mm.
who do we want to be as a theater. And that frustrated me that didn't happen, right? They were just they were in shock, and then they were trying to recreate like a theatrical experience with like really poor technical means. Yeah. So I thought, why not just shut down everything and just go home, and you talk about what do we do? What is this that we're doing? Like, why are we doing this? What type of theater? Now is the time you can make all the changes you've always wanted to make, but not have had the time to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they didn't. And in Germany, and that is important to say at this point, a theater is highly funded by the state. I looked into this before we talked just to be sure. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the theater in Germany is unique in the world because it's to 100%. A lot of the theaters are funded by the state 100%. Wow. So that guarantees complete freedom of art, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to know that, because I don't judge other theaters in other countries who felt like, okay, this is about living or dying now. We have to do something, because otherwise, if we don't react to this crisis, we're going to be unemployed. We're not going to have any money. In Germany, people at the theater, they still got their money. I'm happy about this, but I think it guarantees freedom now for them to rethink structures and missions. Like, why are we even here? What are we doing?
Really gives them the opportunity to come up with some actionable plans for the future when they come out of it. It's so cool to hear that those theaters are 100% funded by the state. And at the same time,
a lot of them. Yeah.
Then,
there's private ones. Yeah.
And at the same time, there are playwrights that aren't picking a side in terms of like what they're creating. It seems like it doesn't sound like the state has got their hand on every theater that they're funding, going like, can't do that play, can't do it like that, got to cut that part. Like, they're allowed to, even with that influence. It's amazing. And the fact that there's that disconnect between the playwrights in certain cases, not all, but enough to where it's a trend, is very unique.
Yeah, it's true. It's I mean, the freedom of art is in our constitution. And Germans like to think of themselves as like the country of thinkers and philosophers, and we have Schiller and Goethe and Beethoven and all that. And but there's some good to that self-image, which is like, okay, we're responsible. We're not only do we, bring this to the world, we have the responsibility to preserve it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the idea that's behind that, like every major city has a city theater and then a state theater, and that implies that it's funded by either the state, as in like I'm in Munich, my state is Bavaria, as you're in Colorado, and the city of Munich has their own theater, and so that idea guarantees that art doesn't need to be, what's the word? Like, it doesn't have to pay off.
It doesn't necessarily have to be economically viable. Like we
economically viable.
Yeah, we can support. Yeah. We want the arts out there. We're going to support them, whether it's making money or not.
Exactly. So what that does, it creates freedom, to be daring and to risk stuff and try out stuff, even though the audience might not like it,
Yeah.
And the government, the influence the government has is that they have a saying in who the artistic director is. Wow. In a theater. And of course, if you're the boss of like the Munich City Theater, which is the Kammerspiele, which is a really beautiful theater, of course they're gonna, they're funded by the city. Of course they're gonna have to show their numbers. And of course, if there's 20 people coming a week, of course we're gonna have that discussion, like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? Yeah. You will still have that discussion, the quality discussion, like, is it working or is it not working? which I think is okay, you know, because art, yeah, needs to be daring, but it's also for the people.
Yeah.
So I think you have to find a balance in that. When you run a theater, luckily you have 30 different shows. What harm is it if you lay it out a little and you do a little bit of that and you do a little bit of this?
Mm-hmm. When you talk about that type of, let's say, government influence, it's really touching that there is, at least from this outsider's perspective, this semblance of care and acknowledgement of the importance of art, and that they would be sitting in with like an artistic director is like, hey, your numbers are pretty low, why aren't the audiences coming in?
Yeah.
Let's try, and we need to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really kind of inspiring. I don't, what we have here in the States, it all feels like, even as an actor that participates in it, it feels like commodity driven. Like, we've got to make a certain number of money on every show so we break even. We've got to be able to pay actors a specific amount. Some theaters can, some theaters can't. Some theaters don't do it at all. Some theaters exceed that. Some of them are operating on equity contracts where they're getting a specific type of artist involved on other projects. While I don't think, a government funded theater is stagnant at all, there's not, it doesn't feel like there's pressure on that company to do something grand for the sake of doing something grand. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. But again, I was a little disappointed to see people become lazy. I think, when it's too comfortable, you become lazy. And I was amazed to see how in other countries theaters reacted to the corona crisis, because they just had to.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is not the worst motivation to. You're flexible. You're more flexible when you have to. Okay, the audience is not coming to you, so you have to come to the audience, and you better make it quick, because your job depends on this. That'll not only creates that pressure, sometimes that also creates creativity, and I miss that a little.
Yeah,
they were like, oh, we're in shock, what did we do?
I had a question I wanted to jump in on.
Yeah.
So right now in Denver and in the United States in general, there's this big push for inclusion, diversity, equity.
Yeah.
And there's a big push in the theater scene and just with the audiences in general. What was the effect of, was the Black Lives Matter movement as effective across the entire world? And are you seeing more of that in your theater right now?
I would not pin it down to the Black Lives Matter movement being the moment where that came in, but it certainly was the moment where it clicked for a lot of people who until then had not really thought about this being a problem. As I said before, I agree. We have the same issues at the moment in German theater. Try to make it more diverse in all areas. Inclusion, you said, right? Equity, inclusion. Yes, we've had that. It's looking back to my 7 years, my 7-year long career. It's really, really become an issue over the last 3 years. I want to say it's really been just not being able to ignore it anymore. In the Black Lives Matter movement, I mean, that's a complex subject, too complex maybe. Because there were people in Germany, obviously, who tried to push it away, saying, "Oh, we don't even have that many Black people in Germany." It's got nothing to do with us, because we don't even have that many Black people. Ignoring the idea that it was about Black people, but racism is something that's inherent in most cultures, and it helped a lot of people come forward and being loud and asking for things. And like I said at the very beginning of our conversation, this case this Me Too case of the artistic director, I think, don't get me wrong, I think some of it has to do with this general feel that now is the time to make a change, whether it be, women coming forward and saying, okay, we don't accept this sort of sexist behavior in theater anymore, or BPOC coming forward, or trans people, or disabled people come forward and say, okay, no, we don't accept that. We don't accept the system as it is anymore. We want to change, and we want to be part of that change. So I think all these movements, which are, I think, one big movement after all, they are saying we don't accept this anymore. Also in theater, and maybe especially in theater, because we think of ourselves as artists, and theater is a utopia also, and we cannot criticize stuff on stage and then have it done backstage the same way. There's a bias, is that the word?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, we have these discussions all the time.
Well, I think one of the things that we've, from as I've witnessed these changes socially and in terms of civil rights for everybody within the last 4 years here in America, I think one of the things that I've noticed in that navigation of these types of conversations, or our responsibilities in specific jobs, is to be as honest as we can with it. I think for me now, it's incumbent that we have these conversations and that we go down these dark roads, because that's the only way we get to the light at the end of it. If we just stay outside of it, if we are afraid to go into that darkness, there's nothing to be gained. Like, everything stays the same, and as you're witnessing, staying the same, remaining stagnant, doesn't solve any problem. They fester, they repeat themselves. You're talking about your class system there, the hierarchy in German theater, where it's more times than not a white man at the top disseminating roles and responsibilities and viewpoints for an entire theater company. And while that one at one theater, you might have a guy that is doing the best work he can and challenges himself and is being open to the idea of being wrong about certain belief systems and trying to grow. There's another theater being run in a similar fashion by somebody who doesn't see those biases within themselves and is making the same choices that are negatively impacting either, whether they know it or not, a specific group of people that have been trying to have their voices heard for a long time. And as we're seeing here in Colorado specifically, and across the nation, across the world, these questions are being brought up, and we're having to answer them because we've wasted too much time. Even it's like I was watching a documentary, and I'm off on this tangent, so forgive me, ghosties, but I was watching this documentary, and they were talking about reconciliation after the Civil War here in America, and it felt like we never reconciled. We just fought the war. We freed the slaves. We asked everyone to shut up and move on. And we never, we're done with racism. And that was clearly not the case. Yeah. We started instituting other laws to keep certain practices in place. We allowed other people with money and power to determine how they built their communities, so on and so forth. We never faced it. We never dealt with it appropriately. And now we have to, because it's gone on too long without it. Every time we've had a civil rights movement, there's some growth. Every time there's been, like with women's suffrage, when we, there was a little bit of growth, and then some syntax choice in the Constitution that allowed us to tamp that improvement down. And we've done that at every stage of our development here in America, and that's trickled down to every system that supports it: medical, economically, residentially, and theater based as well. And those are hard waters to navigate, and it's
absolutely. And I think every country has their own history of racism. There's hardly anyone better than the other. You just have a different story. I wish I could say there were countries in the world who are completely clean and innocent of racism, but I want to say no. So yeah, here I think people here, from what I see, and I write. I work at the newspaper, so I talk a lot to my coworkers who write about politics and write about stuff like that. And the feedback we get from our readers is that a lot of people find it hard even to connect with these ideas, or connect, or like even reflect on the idea that there is racism also in German society. As I said, at the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, there were people who said, "Oh, luckily this got nothing to do with us because they're Black and we don't have that." How weird is that? Try to push it away because it's like, oh, it's an American thing. It's got nothing to do with us. And the great trauma of the German people is the Holocaust, right? So there were a lot of people who said, "Oh, we're already busy dealing with that. So we don't have capacity to deal with structural racism," or like you call it structural racism, right? Like we call it like everyday racism. If you have a Turkish sounding name in Germany, you're less likely to get an apartment. Well, you're less likely to get a job. That is like structural daily racism, and that is real, right? And a lot of people didn't want to look into that because they said, "Oh, I'm saying it like lightheartedly, but they said, oh, we already got the Holocaust to deal with, right? We don't have capacity to deal with this other stuff." But it's important, of course, it's important to have these discussions, and they're like creeping into every little conversation, every little decision you make, and it's important, and but as I said, it's interesting to be a journalist these days, but it's rough, because you get attacked from both sides. And you're not a people pleaser. You don't choose this job to be a people pleaser, right? And I want to say, even if you there's a saying that I learned in journalism school that says, as a journalist, you don't take sides, even if it's the good side. You're supposed to stay objectively, and that brings me back to saying that it's become more difficult to put things into words, because of course I want to be political correct. I don't want to hurt anybody with the words I choose, but of course I'm a critic, right? I still want to be able to objectively criticize things I see or art I see, and that has become really, really difficult. You get attacked very easily from both sides, from like
it happens. It happens here all the time. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Especially in this world that kind of demands sides be taken all the time. We're so into labels.
And yes, sure. And like I think my bosses, I have two. That's why I said my bosses. They're very much for discussion too. So they will always have. They will always make room in our paper for a voice that is criticizing the Black Lives Matter movement. They will always make that space because they say, it's important to have that discussion still. And we're not speaker of a movement, we're there to create the room for discussion. And I think that is very important.
So you have the saying that you want to give equal voice to both sides of the argument. But how do you draw the line when one side of the argument or the other is clearly dangerous or it's propaganda? How do you draw that line?
That's an interesting question. The students that I teach, they ask that a lot. Like, are you allowed to write everything you want in the newspaper? Like, really everything? And then I say yes and no. There's like nobody telling me what opinion I'm supposed to have. But yes, of course. I mean, I work at the Süddeutsche Zeitung, which is like a liberal leftish newspaper. If someone's a Nazi, then you do not get a saying in our paper, And if you have any, if you're hurting if what you're saying is hurting human rights and it's not in line with our constitution, we're not going to give you the space to say it. But if you are critical, if you're smart and you're critical about left-wing feminism, you will have the opportunity. If you have a smart argument, there will be the space to discuss it.
It feels like what you provide is an opportunity for civil discourse. If something is deliberately hurtful or racist or misogynistic, it doesn't sound like there's a place for that, or at least you don't provide a place for that willingly.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Don't you feel like that is there is something at loss at the moment? That the discussions sometimes are so heated that there really is no constructive discussion possible anymore.
I would say that for me, and I won't speak for Dan, but one of the things that I noticed with Trump was that he was just the loudest, angriest voice in the room every time. And there is a propensity for humans, not just Americans, to gravitate towards that. If they buy into any iota of what that loud, angry voice is saying, they'll turn their head. They'll listen. And if they hear enough stuff that they can justify or massage away, and that voice still stays loud and angry, will follow. I mean, there are people who are on the left that have loud, angry voices that I listen to. I listen to Rachel Maddow. Sometimes she's very loud. Sometimes she's very angry. And she is very smart, in my opinion. I don't find her to be dumb. And she delivers her opinion with a specific rhetoric that is not uncommon on Fox News. It's not delivered. I mean, it's delivered the same way. It's just she says something I agree with.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to buy into that. I think we're good at that. And to get to answer your question, I mean, I find it is harder and harder to have a conversation where you can actually calmly debate a specific topic. We just don't do it enough. I mean, I'm a big sports guy. You watch ESPN during the day and it's talking heads yelling at each other. You turn on the news and it's the same. Like you watch Meet the Press on Sundays, and sometimes it's a panel of people who agree with each other and they're all yelling at each other because they want to be heard. And I think like that just, I'll sum up with this. We all want to be heard, and we're not, we may not always understand that the best way to be heard is to listen and then raise your hand to speak.
That is true, but I don't believe in like leaving people out of conversation. As a feminist, I strongly disagree with other feminists saying men need to shut up now. I don't believe in that, because I believe that we're in this together and we need men. I can only speak that's easiest for me to speak as a woman, right? We need men in the conversation. We need reasonable men in the conversation. Like, you know what I mean? Like this
allies.
Aggressive, this silencing, silencing men and like saying, okay, you've had your share of power, you've had your share of time. You shut up now. I mean, for a moment, yes, you know what I mean? But like in general, we need you in the debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe that is true for all the cases that we've just discussed. And
you need support from definitely need support from other parties. If a man is worried about holding on to his power, what does that power look like when no one else has any? To me, that looks weak. It looks insecure.
Yeah.
I feel like power is only amplified when everyone has an opportunity to share in it.
Yeah.
The spoils are better when we're all enjoying them. If you're trying to, at the very least, ask for equal footing, to be treated as an equal, you just matter in the conversation or in the political realm or the professional realm. You need support from people who are outside of your group that's asking. Makes sense.
Yeah. And there's absolutely. And there's no good in like pushing the other ones away. You know, I don't believe in reversing the system. You'll still be in the system.
Yeah.
You know, I don't believe that the world would be a better place if there were only women in power. No, you know. Yeah. I don't believe if you reverse the system, you'll still have the system. You need to work on it together. Yeah. Maybe that's naive or idealistic, but that's what I believe in. So
hope is a dangerous thing, but it's also a very good thing. I wanted to ask you a question. I'm gonna steer us in a different direction now.
Yeah. Oh my God! Look how far we've come.
I've had a great time thus far. I hope you have too. This has been a very enlightening conversation. So thank you, Christiane.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand you've done work on the Passion Play.
Yes.
I would love to hear about this because my knowledge of it is as a student in college, hearing how theater kind of started, and I believe it was I want to say Corpus Christi, but I think that's just a city in Texas. So forgive me. But these pageants, these rolling trucks coming on and displaying something of the divinity or Jesus's struggle, so on and so forth. What was your work been like with that? And please feel free to educate this 37-year-old man.
Finally, the Passion Play. Yes. Yeah. Something I am very passionate about. Nice. So I live in Munich, Bavaria, right? And I'm sure that all of your beloved listeners have an image coming up to their heads when they think of Bavaria. And let me tell you, it is all true. Nice. Yeah. So in Bavaria, there's this little town of Oberammergau, which claims to have the world's oldest and biggest Passion Play. And that means Passion Play is the last days of Jesus Christ, right? His crucifixion until the resurrection. And during the 30-year war, is that how you say it in English? There was a
30-year war.
The 30-year war in Europe. There was a great plague everywhere in Europe. People were dying, and obviously people didn't know what happened, right? They didn't know about viruses. They had no idea. So they thought it was a godly punishment. So the way of asking for God's help would be, okay, dear God, if you only save us from this plague, as a thank you to you, we're going to put on a show for you, and it's going to be a Passion Play. So in 1633 is when the Oberammergau Passion Play was put on stage for the very first time. And this legend has it that after they've done this, no one ever died of the plague again in the town. Huh. So ever since then, every 10 years, the small town of Oberammergau is putting up the Passion Play, and it's become this very world famous theater spectacle with 500,000 visitors from all over the world.
Wow.
Yeah, and and I heard about this a couple of years ago when I started working for the paper, and I thought, this is interesting, you know. A little bit of weird Bavarian history, a little bit of theater. That sounds like a good mix. I'm going to look into that. And so I got in touch with the artistic director, who's also from Oberammergau, because to be in it, you have to be resident of Oberammergau, right? I couldn't be in it because I don't live there. And I said, I'm really interested, and I really want to see how you do it, right? Yeah. Because the Passion Play was supposed to happen in 2020, last year. Yeah, so I spent 3 years following them around. You know, they have all these weird traditions. For instance, a year and a half before the Passion Play, everyone that's in the Passion Play has to stop shaving or cutting their hair. So by the time the Passion Play opens, they all have the biblical hairstyle and the beard, because half the town is involved. That means 2,500 people are involved. Wow. So there's no time and no money to, glue fake beards to everybody's faces. Well, not everybody's, but to men's faces. So they have all these weird traditions, and I followed the preparations for the Passion Play. I went to Israel with a group of actors to prepare for that, because how weird is that? There's two guys who are actually playing Jesus. Wow. Yeah. I mean, if you're a believer or not, it doesn't really matter. Jesus is a big deal. And, you have 500,000 people from around the world. And it's a naturalistic play, too. It's not an abstract piece of art where you can just kind of, no. There really is a cross on stage, and there really is a crucifixion scene. They play this 5 months every other night. And so the Jesus guy will have to be crucified every other night. So that does something to your brain. Yeah. Right? That's
intense.
So yeah, so you know what I mean? I thought this is so interesting on so many levels. There's this religious level, that weird Jesus story, and you have that the little town who all helps together to make this come alive, and you have 500,000 tourists from all over the world, literally. Most of the people that come from outside of Germany come from the United States. Yeah, really. Did you know that?
No, I would have never guessed. That's insane.
Yeah, no. America and Australia, like at Oktoberfest.
Oh, okay. No.
Yeah.
Wow. That is, I'm amazed that, for me, that is so cool that something like that still exists, and at such a grand scale.
Yeah.
Have there been any other cancellations between its first and now? Because I was going to say it'd be pretty odd if they did it for the first time to get rid of the plague and it was canceled because of another plague.
Yeah, that's the irony, right? That's the irony of the situation that we have this year. It was invented to overcome a plague, and now it's not happening because of a plague. I think it was in the almost 400 years that this exists. It's been canceled, I think, 3 or 4 times due to war. There were no plays, of course, in 1940 because that was when Germany was at war. There were plays in 1950 again, and ever since they've done it every 10 years. And so this was really, like I said, it's 1 year ago that they had to cancel it. Everything was ready pretty much, I was gonna write a book about this. Me and a coworker together. He is a photographer as well, so he always came along, and we took a bunch of pictures, and we interviewed every Jesus, every Mary, everybody, did interviews, and like I said, went to Israel with them, and I hung out there a lot in Oberammergau. It's a pretty mountain town near in the Alps. It's very pretty, and we were, everybody was on fire. We were writing the book and editing the photos, and they were like rehearsing the final scenes. It was March, and it was supposed to open, I think, May 5th or something, and they can't. Obviously, they had to cancel it. They had to cancel it a year ago, and fortunately, they moved it to 2022.
Okay.
Last year, I thought, why didn't they just move it to 2021? Of course, us all being Corona naive, right? Yeah. We thought this was going to be like a 3-month thing, and then it was going to be gone. No, they were wiser. They realized this is going to be bigger, and they moved it to 2022. So
is the book
everybody
still coming?
Cut their hair? Yeah, I'm not sure. No. I hope so. I had to distract myself a little. I was very sad when it got canceled. Yeah. So people got to cut their hair again, which they did.
Nice.
The guys looked a little bit like you.
So handsome.
With a longer beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just a month ago that they started to regrow again. It was that date again,
Nice.
In February. Yeah. So this is an interesting, also I see this is part of my job too. It is not like regular city theater, but it's a very theatrical tradition.
Mm-hmm.
One of the oldest theatrical traditions in the world in this village. And yeah, we have a lot of things that are mixed into that. It's not just an artistic project. I don't think they call it an artistic project. To them, it's part of their identity. Yeah. As a person from Oberammergau, you're in this, right? Yeah. And I can understand the magic of that. I can see why you get hooked. The small town, I think there's like 5,000 people who live there. Half of the people are involved, either on stage or backstage. They have a choir, they have an orchestra, right? They have people in the costume apartment, in the set design, or ushers, people working in ticketing and stuff. So I totally get why that is exciting to be a part of. And they don't do it because they think it's art. They do it because it's part of who they are.
Yeah, it's part of their culture.
Yeah.
Oh,
do you think you'd be in the Passion Play, or you wouldn't be in the Passion Play?
If
you lived there.
If I lived there,
yeah.
I feel like I would be a part of it. I am an atheist myself.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I think if I lived there, I'd be like, if it was passed down generationally, like the opportunity to do this and present such a important story to so many people, yeah, I'd sign up every time.
Right?
Yeah.
Every 10 years.
Because the message itself is bigger than my beliefs. It's bigger than me. I feel like that I'm not going to begin to sit here and say that it's wrong because I don't agree with it. It's just not for me. But it means that much to you, and it's an opportunity to perform. Me personally, I would definitely go up there and do what I could.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it used to just be for Catholics, because in Bavaria everybody's Catholic, so it used to just be for Catholics. But a couple of years ago, a couple of Passion Plays ago, the artistic director said, through that, whoever wants to be part of it, you have to be, you have to live in Oberammergau.
Yeah.
That's you have to provide that. But other than that, and I talked to a lot of people who are in the play who either, I don't think there's a Jew, but there's certainly Muslims in the Passion Play, and a bunch of atheists. And yeah.
That's great.
But they do it for like you said, they do it for the bigger idea, like of this encounter and coming together and bringing it to life. And it's a good story after all,
Yeah. It's one of the world's most famous stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Christiane, I've had such a great time talking with you and learning about your perspective.
Me too.
Before we sign off, what is that ghost light you wish was left on for you when you started your career? That piece of advice you'd like to hand off to the next generation?
Don't take yourself too seriously.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a certain relief in that, and especially as journalists, we like to think of ourselves as very important, or of our opinions as very important, and our names and our pictures. Journalists are always a little bit narcissist, of course. You have your name in a paper or online, and I wish I had been a little bit cooler about that at the beginning, because I put a lot of pressure on myself, and we're all just humans. And even as a journalist, you have to work carefully, but you're just one person. And with one opinion. And when you're writing a critic about a theater piece, it is not the truth about this artistic production. It is your perspective.
Absolutely.
So don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much. Ghosties, again, we're sitting with Christiane Lutz, German theater critic. What's the paper that you work for?
Yeah, it's the Süddeutsche Zeitung.
I'll make sure that we get that down, and we'll try and get a link to your homepage out there. That'd be great. With that being said, Harry Styles, I don't know what you're doing, but you're doing it well. We love you here at the Ghost Lights podcast. We love you, Ghosties. Dan, do the damn thing.